Oh, hey, wanna hang out? Let's hang out. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. Happy Pride Month! With my recent coming out video, now, if you didn't see that, we've been new. I've been up to some public gay shit for a long time. I just never clarified my identity, and so I took a second to do that and explain kind of my journey of why I only officially came out at 23. So check that out if you haven't seen it already. But as a result of that video, it definitely landed on the wrong demographics feed. And by that I mean, even though I did receive a ton of support and love, and I thank every single person for sweet words, the goal of posting that video wasn't even necessarily to garner sympathy or to receive affirmation and support from people. I think that's just a natural part of a queer community, is when someone does come out to you with their identity, that happens. And it's a thing that I find very beautiful, but that wasn't my intention. I really just wanted to be like, hey guys, I never got to do this, so I'm doing it. But that pissed off the wrong crowd of people. And so with the overwhelming majority of support, there also was a lot of homophobia. And I've been thinking about it a lot since that. Now I know I'm a biased source, but every single homophobic argument I've heard just doesn't make sense. Like, homophobia just doesn't make sense. And so I wanted to take a chunk of time to, I guess, not only celebrate for Pride, but absolutely destroy the shit out of some homophobic arguments. Shall we? Let's go through the classics. I can't obviously dissect every single homophobic comment I receive, but they all belong to a few categories, and that's what I'm gonna break down today. Because there's about 6 or 7 classic archetypes of homophobic argument that each comment falls into, and again, they make no sense. I think with about 6 years of being publicly gay, one that I've seen the most and received the most is just that being gay is not natural. And this one might be the dumbest of them all. There are over 1,500 different documented species, not cases, species outside of humans that have same-sex behavior. And that's not just sex. If anyone wants to take that argument and run with the animalistic nature of sex, there are species that have lifelong same-sex partnerships and cohabit and co-parent homosexually. A really popular example of this in zoology is male bottlenose dolphins. They form connections that last decades to a lifetime, and when they're apart for extended periods of time, their reunions are filled with affection and like cuddling. But dolphins obviously aren't the only species. Again, remember that 1,500 number. There's bonobos, which I even learned about in university, and I was a psych major, so I had nothing to do with zoology. I mean, the list goes on. So the fact that someone could state or argue that it's not natural is just simply not true. So if you are watching this video and you think that homosexuality isn't valid because it's not natural, I urge you to reconsider, because it's not even just an opinion, it's science. But aside from animals, another big homophobic remark I've gotten a lot recently, or like reasoning behind why they don't support gay people, is, for lack of better phrasing, genetic ending, or that I would be ending my bloodline by being gay. And this is just another really silly argument to me, because it's so easily disproven. I mean, with modern technology, we have IVF, which albeit is expensive, but is increasingly growing in popularity. And there's artificial insemination, which is even more common. Now, if you're not well versed in either of these, that's okay. I'm about to tell you a little bit more about them. IVF, which is short for in vitro fertilization, is a modern solution for family planning, whether it's for homosexual or heterosexual couples. Basically, what this process is a laboratory will take semen and will take ovum, and they will fertilize an egg outside of the womb. Once they have samples that are fertilized, they will implant them into the individual's uterus. It's not a 100% success rate, but the goal with this is to create a pregnancy. And I don't know if you caught that, but there are both genetic parts in there, and when you are using your eggs for fertilization, you are not ending your bloodline. I know that there's going to be a response to this about how that's only one half of the partnership. I've seen plenty of queer couples where they each have a kid of their own genetic material, so they each can have their own children. Where's the bloodline ending there? And same goes for artificial insemination, which, again, if you're not familiar, artificial insemination is just the insertion of semen into the vaginal canal with the goal of getting pregnant. If you've ever heard a turkey baster joke in queer communities, that's what that's about. But it is also worth mentioning that both of these methods of family planning are not exclusive to homosexual partnerships. And you're probably thinking, hey, thanks, Captain Obvious, we know that. But when I've tried to talk to homophobic individuals with this line of thinking, they kind of loop around to the unnatural side of it about how like you shouldn't need technology to have a family. And that always comes off terribly because there are heterosexual partnerships that are also struggling with fertility issues and use these methods. Now, this third homophobic argument is a new one for me. I've only really started seeing this one more recently. I'm sure that predates this year, but I personally have been experiencing arguments and conversations about specifically this style of this flavor of homophobia, if you will, within the past year, and that would be anti-natalism. I've had a couple different homophobic individuals argue that by me being gay, I am anti-natalist by nature, and they are a pro-natalist person and can't support that. Anti-natalism is a philosophical stance that having children is morally wrong, and that there's like a couple different arguments, like a couple different core parts of this philosophical argument, one of them being that like children can't consent to being born. But the short and skinny of it is you are against having children because having children is wrong. And I get so confused when I am accused of this for simply being gay, because being gay has nothing to do with my stance on family planning and child rearing. These individuals haven't even taken a second to get to know whether or not I want kids. And if I don't want kids, is that the reason? Or is it just because I can't afford them? Or maybe I'm 23? Or whatever reason it may be. But I've been seeing increasing amounts of this rhetoric and argument on the internet lately, and I just have to debrief and debunk this because, again, it makes zero sense to me. Now, there are a good amount of queer partnerships that opt out of having children, but there are also a lot of heterosexual couples that do the same. For example, again, another cursory search on TikTok, if you look up DINK lifestyle, which sounds really funny, but stands for dual income, no kids, majority of the couples I see on this are heterosexual couples that opt out of having children. So why does your belief that not having kids is wrong have to do with me being gay? There are tons of straight people not doing it. Go shit on them. Actually, don't. I think anyone's valid in their decision to not have children. I would much rather someone who doesn't want to be a parent not become a parent than to have kids anyways, not raise them properly, potentially abuse them or mistreat them just for the sake of having a child. I feel like a more responsible pro-child rearing stance would be in support of opting out of children if that's your path. Because again, why would you force yourself to have children when you don't think you have the capabilities to raise them or don't have the drive to raise them, which will result in incorrect parenting? Now, you've probably made it to this part of the video and you're like, Dara, how have you not talked about religion? Religion is the most common excuse I get for homophobia. And when I'm talking to other queer people, it's also the most common excuse for homophobia that they experience. I'm not gonna lie, my notes app is structured that way where it was this part of the video. That's why it took me this long. But there is definitely a big conversation to be had with religion and homophobia and policing people's lifestyles. Now, I am no expert in religion. I was lucky enough to grow up with a family that participated in agnosticism, which is just like lack of belief or not perpetuating any particular belief. But outside of my family, the town that I grew up in was incredibly conservative and Christian, so I am no stranger to religious homophobia. This might be the most controversial homophobia discussion, especially for Christianity, because the Bible is so old that the modern translations of it have been heavily debated on whether or not they're mistranslations that are now used to peddle homophobia, but were originally versus tackling pedophilia or prostitution or rape. I didn't grow up religious, so I have not read the Bible, but I did find a really good breakdown from pbs.org going over the different popular verses that are used to support homophobic arguments. So I want to take a second to kind of read that with you guys and bring up some new perspectives or new points on centuries old text. I think, and I could be wrong, the most popular verse that is brought up in homophobic discussions is Leviticus 18:22 and 20:13. And what PBS has stated is that these verses do talk about male homosexuality, but not quite in the way that it's being used to argue and debate homosexuality today. Their perspective on this is that one possible answer to the objection is that these verses are not simply homophobia, but objection to wasting of semen. If we think about Christianity in a historical context, and this is again something I learned in my psychology classes, for a long time, there was not just an aversion to homosexual sex, but non-procreative sex, even within marriages. And there are still people today that practice religion in that way, where within their marriage, they are not to have sex unless they are intending to bear children. Now, because this was way more common historically, it's not typically an angle that we think about nowadays when we read that text. So PBS makes a really good point when they talk about how the objection in these verses isn't necessarily to male on male sex, but sex that is non-procreative. I guarantee majority of these people that argue with these specific verses are not strictly only having childbearing sex. Most Christians I've interacted with aren't against wasting semen. Even outside of sexual relations with another person, there are plenty of religious people who masturbate and ejaculate. Where is that semen going? They're not collecting it and donating it to lesbians for artificial insemination. It's not being used. They are, in theory, wasting semen, which is no longer really a sin. So if these verses are from the perspective of aversion to semen waste, it's no longer about gay people. That's just the only part that modern religious people are still against. There are other verses as well. I'm going to link the PBS article in the description of this video. I highly encourage checking it out. But I don't want to spend forever talking about religion, because there is another sector of homophobia that is a little more personal to me that I want to talk about, which is the argument that you just haven't found the right guy or you haven't found the right girl. And this one is more personal to me because of the journey I went through being in the closet and participating in heteronormative culture to stay in the closet. I had boyfriends. I have previous experience where I tried to make that attraction work, and I wanted it to, because I wanted the validation to feel real to me, and I wanted to feel what had been shown to me in movies my whole life, and these love stories between a man and a woman. I genuinely put in my best effort, but it wasn't just a case of, well, you were young and so they didn't know how to interact in a relationship. It wasn't real relationship issues like communication or effort or love languages. It was just, it all boiled down to the fact that I just wasn't attracted to them. I was in these relationships, I was performing these roles, but I didn't feel that intrinsic attraction like the way I do with women. I said this in my coming out video, and it's something I say a lot, but knowing I liked women was the easy part. Because I grew up without that representation, the moment I learned that it was an option to love women as a woman or be attracted to women as a woman, I knew that that was my reality. But because I was raised so strongly with heteronormative beliefs in a heteronormative town, in a heteronormative culture, I really did put my best effort into trying to feel attraction towards a man. And for a while I identified as pansexual or bisexual or queer, because I really thought if I put in my best effort it could work, and it never did. There was just this emptiness when I tried relationships with men that I don't experience at all with women. I feel so full and primal love and care, and there is no right guy for me, and that's okay. I think there is a larger statistic than we're aware of homophobic individuals that are closeted queer or bisexual or pansexual or in denial about being queer. And maybe they don't even realize it, and that's why they think you can choose the right guy or that you have a choice in this. But I don't. And don't get me wrong, I'm down for that. But I just can't wrap my mind around the argument that there's a right guy out there for me, that there's the right heterosexual situationship for me. Because I don't think I should have to fight and force myself to be in that for the sake of your comfort, when I know that that's not my path, and I know that that's not where my attraction lies. Yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on a lot of common homophobic arguments. I'm sure I probably missed some. Again, I've been publicly gay on the internet for about 6 years now, so I've seen a lot of homophobia. If you're watching this and you've made it this far and you're still homophobic for some reason other than all the ones I've just debunked, let me know, because I'm still not going to understand you, and I'm probably going to have some sort of evidence against you. And that, honestly, I know people say not to respond to hate comments. but it's kind of fun sometimes. So give me something to do. I also love learning things and researching. I have an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. So when people come in my comment section and they give me a new argument that I haven't heard of before, it just gives me a chance to look into more things and learn more things and do more research. And that's fun for me. So if you're still homophobic and you're watching this, let me have some fun and let me go at you. Ooh, I don't want to go at you like that. I want to go at you with my brain. No. I think it's time for me to wrap this video. So basically, happy Pride Month. If you're homophobic, I don't agree with you, obviously. And if you're gay and you took any of these sort of arguments to heart, or they made you feel even slightly less valid in your identity than you are, I hope this video helped you. And I hope this maybe can put a couple tools in your toolbox if you're debating with family members or just an individual that has differing views on you on homosexuality. That being said, thanks for hanging out with me. I had fun, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.